The sky burned with shades of red and gray. Thick clouds of dust and smoke drifted across the horizon, hiding the sun and casting the barren land in a dull, restless light. Broken cities sprawled across the desert like abandoned bones. Towers that once reached the clouds now lay shattered, crumbling under the weight of years of war. The wind carried ash and the faint smell of burning metal. In the distance, the sound of collapsing structures echoed like a mournful cry. Among the ruins, a lone figure struggled forward. Her movements were slow and uneven, each step more painful than the last. Her body was battered, her clothing torn, and her pale skin marked with cuts and bruises. Every breath she took felt heavy, as if the air itself was trying to push her down. She was a young alien woman with bright eyes that still shone despite the exhaustion, and a small frame that had survived far more than it should have. Her name was Lyra. She pressed herself against a collapsed wall and lowered her head. Her mind was a storm of fear and memories. The battle had ended hours ago, maybe even days. She had lost count of time, lost count of everything. Her own people, those she had trusted, had abandoned her. She had been left to die among the ruins of a city that once symbolized hope. Now there was only silence. Only the wind, and the occasional distant cry of a creature that dared wander the wasteland. Lyra tried to remember how it had all gone wrong. She had been part of the Planetary Defense Force, tasked with protecting her city from invaders. But the invaders had come in greater numbers than anyone expected. When the battle turned against them, her commanders had fled, leaving their soldiers to die. She had been struck by debris during the chaos, her leg broken, her side cut. Alone, she had crawled through the wreckage, hiding from enemy patrols, struggling to survive. Her breathing was slow, measured, but even that was difficult. She glanced toward the horizon, where a faint shimmer suggested movement, perhaps an enemy scout. Her heart pounded. Her body screamed at her to keep moving, but each step was agony. Her thoughts were a tangle of fear, anger, and disbelief. How could anyone leave someone behind like that? How could they betray her so completely? A faint sound reached her ears, almost drowned by the wind. She froze, straining to listen. It was a low, steady vibration, unlike the cries of the wind or the groaning of the ruined buildings. Her eyes widened. Someone was coming. She pressed herself further into the shadows, her muscles tense, ready to flee or fight. Her instincts screamed that it could be a predator or worse, another enemy soldier. Then, a small shape appeared in the distance, moving steadily across the rubble. It was not like the alien soldiers she had fought, nor any creature she had seen. The figure moved with purpose, not hesitation. Lyra watched silently, every nerve on edge. She wanted to run, but her leg protested. The thought of leaving her hiding place was terrifying. The figure came closer. Now she could see it clearly. A human. Clad in a sleek suit with a helmet reflecting the dull sunlight, the human seemed careful, cautious, yet determined. They carried a small device that glowed faintly, scanning the area as they walked. Lyra's heart leapt in her chest. Humans were not common on this planet. She had heard stories of them from old news broadcasts and intercepted communications, but she had never seen one up close. Her fear warred with hope. Could this human help her? Could they be the answer to her prayers? She wanted to call out, to wave, to signal her presence. But doubt held her back. What if they were dangerous? What if this was a trap? She had learned the hard way that trust could be deadly. The human stopped suddenly, crouching to examine something on the ground. Lyra held her breath. They were careful, observant, not rushing. This was different from the soldiers who had abandoned her, different from anyone she had seen on this desolate world. Slowly, a thought crept into her mind. Maybe, just maybe, this human was not here to hurt her. She remembered the stories she had heard about humans, about their bravery, their compassion, and their strange determination to help even those they did not know. She had been skeptical, but now, watching this figure move through the wreckage, a spark of hope flickered inside her. Her body ached with exhaustion, but she forced herself to move. Slowly, carefully, keeping to the shadows. She wanted to see more of this human, to understand their intentions. Each step was painful, but she did not care. The possibility of help was worth the risk. The human knelt down, adjusting a small device that hummed and blinked with soft lights. Lyra watched as they scanned the area, then looked around, their visor reflecting the ruins. There was no sign of hostility, no weapons drawn, just careful observation. Her hope grew. Maybe this was her chance to survive. Suddenly, a noise behind her made her flinch. A weak groan, barely audible. She spun, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The wind carried only dust and debris. She calmed herself, taking a deep breath, and returned her attention to the human. The human stood and began moving again, slowly making their way toward a collapsed building. Lyra followed, keeping low, careful not to make a sound. As she moved, she thought about her situation. She was alone, injured, and abandoned. Every instinct told her to hide, to avoid everyone. But this human seemed different. There was something in the way they moved, something that made her feel, for the first time in days, that survival might be possible. They reached a small clearing between two ruined towers. The human paused, scanning the area with their device. Lyra felt her heart hammer in her chest. This was at the moment that could change everything. Slowly, she stepped forward, trying to make her presence known without alarming them. A branch snapped under her foot. The human froze, turning quickly. Lyra froze as well, unsure what would happen next. The human raised a hand, signaling for her to stop. Their visor reflected her image for a brief moment, and she saw something in their posture: curiosity, not aggression. Relief washed over her, but she remained cautious. The human spoke, their voice calm and gentle, though she could not understand the language perfectly. But the tone was clear, friendly, not hostile. Lyra took a deep breath and tried a few words from the human language, hoping they would understand. "Help. Me," she whispered, her voice weak. The human tilted their head, then nodded. Slowly, carefully, they began moving toward her. Lyra did not run. She wanted this, needed this. The human knelt down a few meters away, keeping their movements slow and non-threatening. Then, with a device that emitted a soft glow, they scanned her from a distance. The device hummed, analyzing her injuries. Lyra winced as the machine read the cuts and bruises on her body. The human spoke again, softly, and gestured for her to stay still. She obeyed, too exhausted to move quickly. The machine glowed brighter, and a gentle warmth spread through her body as it treated her wounds. Pain eased slightly, and she felt a strange sense of safety, for the first time in what felt like forever. Lyra allowed herself to breathe. She looked at the human, who now removed their helmet, revealing a kind face with determined eyes. They smiled faintly, and in that simple gesture, Lyra felt something she had not felt in days' trust. The human spoke again, slowly, using simple words. Lyra understood a few of them. Safe. Come, ship. They pointed toward the horizon, where a small human vessel rested on a rocky plateau. Lyra's heart leaped. They wanted to take her somewhere safe. She tried to stand, but her body protested. The human immediately moved closer, helping her. With careful hands, they supported her as she took each step, guiding her toward the ship. Each movement was painful, but with the human's help, she managed. She had never been helped like this before, and the sensation was almost overwhelming. As they walked, Lyra stole glances at the ship. It was small but sturdy, designed to survive even the harshest planets. The human moved with confidence, navigating the rough terrain effortlessly. Lyra realized something remarkable. This human alone could survive here. Alone, they could make a difference. And now, they were helping her. She wanted to speak, to thank them, but words failed her. Instead, she simply squeezed their arm lightly, a gesture of gratitude. The human smiled again, understanding without needing words. They were allies now, bound by the unspoken connection of survival. The horizon seemed a little brighter as they approached the ship. The sky, still red and gray, no longer felt oppressive. There was hope here, hope that she could live, that she could escape the ruins, that she could find a new beginning, and for the first time since the battle, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a future where she was not alone. The human ship hummed softly as it rested on the rocky plateau, its metallic surface gleaming faintly under the dim light of the dust-filled sky. Lyra leaned on the human's strong arm as they climbed the last few meters toward it. Each step sent waves of pain through her body, but the human's steady support kept her moving. Her wounds, though slowly healing from the device's treatment, still throbbed painfully. The human looked at her with calm, determined eyes. There was no hesitation in their movements, no sign of fear or doubt. Every action was deliberate, careful, and protective. Lyra studied their face, noting the sharpness of their features, the warm expression in their eyes. Something about them made her feel safe, something she had not felt in weeks. "Inside," the human said gently, pointing to the ship's open hatch. Their voice was calm, almost soothing. Though Lyra only understood some words, the meaning was clear. They wanted her to come inside. She nodded weakly and let herself be guided up the ramp. The interior of the ship was compact but functional. Soft lights illuminated panels filled with blinking indicators and displays. The air was warm and clean, a stark contrast to the dusty, cold world outside. Lyra gasped softly as she sat down on a padded bench. Overwhelmed by the sudden comfort, the human moved to a small console and pressed a few buttons. A compartment opened, revealing supplies, medical kits, water, and food. They gestured for Lyra to drink, and she obeyed, taking small sips. Her throat was dry. But even that small comfort felt like a luxury after the harsh desert she had endured. "You safe?" Lyra managed to ask, her voice faint. The human nodded. "Yes, safe," they said slowly, emphasizing the words. Their voice had a gentle authority, and their calm presence seemed to ease Lyra's tension. She believed them. For the first time, she believed she could survive. The human knelt beside her, opening a small medical kit. "Wounds. Need more," they said, pointing to her side and her leg. Lyra hesitated. She had been alone for so long that the thought of someone touching her wounds felt strange. But she trusted this human. Slowly, she allowed them to examine her injuries. The human worked carefully, cleaning each cut, bandaging her leg, and applying a soothing gel to her side. Lyra flinched once, but the human's touch was steady, careful, and gentle. They did not rush, and they did not show impatience. Each movement was precise, deliberate, and reassuring. While they worked, Lyra looked around the ship. It was not just a vessel. It was a safe haven, a place designed for survival. Instruments monitored the environment, and small lights blinked on panels, signaling systems functioning smoothly. She realized how different humans were, how they used intelligence and preparation to face danger rather than relying solely on strength. "Name?" the human asked finally, pausing their work. "Lyra," she whispered. The word felt foreign on her tongue after weeks of silence, but it was hers. A small reminder of who she was. The human nodded, smiling faintly. "Name understood," they said. There was respect in their tone, as if a name was important, a symbol of identity and value. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest at the recognition. "You, alone?" the human asked, glancing at her bandages and bruises. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "Yes, abandoned," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The word carried the weight of everything she had endured, the betrayal, the fear, the endless struggle to survive. The human's expression softened. They did not judge her or question her. They simply acknowledged her truth. "Not now," they said gently. "Here, safe." For the first time in what felt like forever, Lyra let herself relax. She slumped slightly against the bench, feeling the tension in her body ease. The human's presence was calming, steady, and reassuring. She wanted to speak, to thank them. But words felt small compared to the gratitude swelling in her chest. The human moved to a console again and activated a small display. A holographic map appeared, showing the planet and surrounding areas. Lyra watched as the human pointed to a distant point beyond the desert. "Goal. Safe place," they said. The hologram highlighted a small human research station on a nearby planet. Lyra's eyes widened. Leave planet. She asked. The human nodded. Yes, leave. Safe place, they replied. Their tone carried certainty. Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could escape this desolate world, leave behind the ruins and the memories of betrayal. Perhaps she could survive, not just exist, but live. The human then handed her a small device. It was light, warm, and pulsed gently. Tracking heal. Safe, they explained. Lyra realized it was a portable healing device, designed to accelerate recovery and monitor her condition. She held it in her hand, marveling at the technology. Already she could feel some of her fatigue and pain easing. She looked at the human, wanting to ask something but hesitated. Instead, she simply nodded, a silent agreement to trust them. The human returned the nod, understanding without words. This simple connection felt profound. In a world full of danger and betrayal, this small bond felt like a lifeline as the human prepared the ship for departure. Lyra looked outside through the small viewport. The ruined city stretched endlessly, the broken towers casting long shadows over the desert. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She was leaving behind the world that had tried to kill her, but she was also leaving memories of loss and pain. Yet with this human, she felt she could face the unknown, face a new beginning. The engines of the ship hummed louder, and the craft began to rise from the rocky plateau. Lyra held onto the bench as the wind buffeted the ship slightly. She felt the vibration through her body, a physical reminder that she was moving, leaving the past behind. The human sat beside her, calm and steady. Guiding the ship through the dust storms and jagged rocks, hours passed, and Lyra began to feel the effects of the healing device. Pain subsided, her leg became easier to move, and her side no longer throbbed relentlessly. She marveled at the human's efficiency and knowledge. This was not just survival, it was care, compassion, and skill combined. She realized how remarkable humans were. They could face danger, help others, and solve problems that seemed impossible. As night fell, the ship glided over the desert, under a sky full of faint stars visible through the thin clouds. Lyra felt a sense of peace she had not known for a long time. The human glanced at her, and for a moment they shared a silent understanding. No words were needed. Both had faced hardships. Both had endured fear and pain, and now, together, they were moving toward safety. The human prepared a small bed in the corner of the ship for Lyra to rest. Sleep, heal, they said gently. She nodded and allowed herself to lie down. The motion of the ship was gentle, almost soothing. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, she felt her body relax completely. The wounds that had made her fear every movement were being cared for, and the presence of the human beside her was reassuring. Before sleep took her fully, she looked at the human one last time. There was determination in their eyes, a quiet strength that gave her hope. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, but words felt unnecessary. She only needed to trust. She only needed to survive, and for the first time, she believed she could. The human ship soared above the barren planet, leaving behind the dust-choked ruins where Lyra had nearly died. Below them, jagged mountains and crumbled cities stretched across the desolate landscape. Despite the ship's hum of engines, the world felt quiet and empty, as though it were holding its breath after the destruction. Lyra sat near the viewport, her eyes tracing the rough terrain below. The healing device the human had given her was doing its work. The pain in her leg and side had eased considerably, and her muscles no longer trembled with exhaustion. For the first time since the battle, she could move without constant agony. But her mind was restless. She could not shake the images of betrayal, the faces of those who had abandoned her, the chaos of the ruined city, the endless emptiness of the desert. The human noticed her staring quietly. They spoke in their calm, deliberate tone. Strong. Survive. Good, they said. Their words were simple, but Lyra understood the meaning. It was not praise she needed. It was reassurance that she could endure, that she was not alone. She looked at them, studying their face. There was determination in their eyes, but also patience. And something gentler, quiet understanding that she needed care as much as protection. The ship descended gradually, preparing to land near a safer area where ground travel would be possible. The human guided it carefully between jagged rocks and craters, demonstrating skill and experience. Lyra noticed that even with advanced technology, they remained alert, scanning for dangers she could not yet see. She realized humans had a different way of surviving. They combined courage with intelligence, action with planning. They did not just survive by strength alone. The ship finally landed on a flat area between two rocky cliffs. The engines hummed softly, then cut out. Silence settled inside the vessel. Lyra stretched her stiff legs and stood with the human's help. Her movements were still awkward, but the healing device had done enough to restore basic mobility. Walk. Careful, the human said, pointing toward the narrow canyon ahead. Lyra nodded. She gripped their arm lightly for support, and together they stepped out into the harsh light. The wind whipped around them, carrying dust and the faint smell of scorched metal from the distant ruins. The canyon stretched ahead like a twisting scar across the land. It was narrow, dangerous, and full of hidden threats. But it was their only path forward. The human led the way, scanning the terrain with their device, moving with quiet confidence. Lyra followed, each step feeling more solid than the last. Her trust in the human had grown steadily since their first meeting. Now she realized how much she depended on them. As they moved, shadows shifted in the canyon. Lyra tensed, ready to react. She had survived ambushes and predators before, but now she was not alone. She glanced at the human, who met her gaze with calm determination. Together, they moved forward, alert to any danger. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed from above. Lyra froze. A group of flying creatures, twisted and skeletal, descended from the canyon walls, drawn by their movement. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to run, but the human raised a hand. Signaling her to stay calm, the human reached into a small pack and pulled out a device that emitted a bright, piercing light. The creatures shrieked and veered away from the beam, momentarily stunned. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she followed the human's lead, moving carefully along the canyon floor. The creatures circled once, then retreated into the shadows. Lyra realized humans were not just physically strong, they were clever, able to use tools and strategy to overcome danger. Hours passed as they navigated the canyon. Lyra's strength grew with every step, and her confidence in the human increased. She began to speak in broken words, asking questions about the ship, the technology, and the human's home. The human answered patiently, using simple words and gestures. Each answer built her understanding, and with it her trust. At one point, they reached a narrow ledge along a steep cliff. A misstep could mean a deadly fall. Lyra froze, unsure how to proceed. The human crouched beside her. Step, slow. Safe, they instructed. She nodded, gripping the ledge, and with the human's steady hand guiding her, she inched along the narrow path. Each step was terrifying, but with their support, she felt courage she had not known she possessed. As they continued, Lyra began to speak more freely. She told the human about the battle, the betrayal, and the fear she had endured. The human listened silently, nodding, and occasionally offering soft, encouraging words. Lyra realized that humans had a unique strength. Not only could they face physical dangers, but they could also provide emotional support, helping others heal from fear and loss. Night fell, and the canyon grew colder. Lyra shivered, and the human removed a small blanket from their pack, draping it around her shoulders. She looked at them, a mixture of gratitude and awe in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The human smiled faintly, a small gesture that spoke volumes. They did not need words. Their actions had already shown care and trust. As they rested for a short while, Lyra noticed faint movements in the shadows. Enemy scouts? Or perhaps creatures drawn by their presence? She did not know, but the human remained alert, keeping watch while she recovered. Their vigilance was reassuring. Lyra realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about preparation, its intelligence, and the willingness to protect others. Humans seemed to embody all of these qualities. The next day, They faced another obstacle, a collapsed bridge spanning a deep chasm. The gap was too wide to jump and the edges were unstable. Lyra's heart sank as she looked down at the void below. The humans scanned the structure carefully. Plan. Careful, they said, motioning for her to follow, using ropes and climbing tools from the ship. The human anchored themselves and tested the bridge's stability. Lyra watched, her trust in them growing with every careful move. Step by step, they crossed the chasm. When it was her turn, the human held the rope firmly, guiding her across. Her hands trembled, but their steady presence gave her the courage to move forward. Together, they reached the other side safely. By the time they descended into the valley beyond the canyon, Lyra felt a sense of achievement she had not felt in weeks. She was still wounded, still weak in many ways, but she was surviving. And she was not alone. The human had shown her that trust could exist even in a world full of betrayal. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain, the human set up a temporary camp. Lyra helped as best she could, grateful for the opportunity to contribute. They shared a simple meal, and for the first time in days, Lyra felt a small sense of normalcy. She realized that humans did not just survive. They adapted, helped, and created hope even in the darkest situations. Before they rested, Lyra looked at the human. "Why, help me?" she asked, her voice quiet. The human paused, then smiled gently. "Life, matter, help. Others," they said. "Strong, care." Their words were simple, but their meaning was clear. Humans believed in helping others, even strangers, even those abandoned and forgotten. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had thought lost forever. That night, as she lay on the makeshift bed, wrapped in the blanket, Lyra reflected on the journey so far. She had survived a battle, betrayal, and the harsh wasteland. She had faced predators, treacherous terrain, and her own fear. Yet, with the human beside her, she had found hope. The bond they were forming was more than trust. It was a partnership, a promise that they would face whatever came next. Together, sleep came slowly, but it was peaceful. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt safe. She dreamed not of the ruins and betrayal, but of possibilities of future where she could heal, learn, and grow. And beside her, the human slept lightly, vigilant, even in rest, a silent guardian who had changed her life in ways she could not yet fully understand. The journey was far from over. Dangerous terrain, enemies, and uncertainty still lay ahead. But for the first time, Lyra believed she could survive. Not just survive, but thrive. She had found an ally, a protector, and a friend in a human who had appeared in the wasteland when she needed help the most. Together, they would face the challenges to come, one careful, determined step at a time. The canyon stretched before them like a dark, twisting corridor. Shadows clung to the walls, and the wind carried an eerie whistle that made Lyra shiver. She walked carefully beside the human, her movements steady but alert. The healing device had restored much of her strength. Yet the tension in her muscles reminded her that danger could strike at any moment. The human moved with quiet confidence, scanning the surroundings with the small device that hummed softly in their hand. Every so often they would pause, listening, eyes narrowing at some faint sound in the shadows. Lyra had learned to trust their instincts. Humans seemed able to notice things she would miss: the slight shift of a rock, faint trace of movement, the subtle change in the wind. Their attention to detail was remarkable. She felt safer with every step they took. Suddenly a low growl echoed from the darkness above. Lyra froze. The sound was not mechanical or natural, it was alive, intelligent, and threatening. From the shadows, a group of twisted, skeletal creatures emerged, their eyes glinting with hunger and malice. Lyra's heart raced. These were no ordinary predators. They had been drawn by the presence of movement. And now they circled them like wolves. The human raised a hand, signaling her to stay calm. They reached into their pack and pulled out a small, glowing device. A pulse of light shot from it, and the creatures recoiled, shrieking in surprise. The human's eyes met Lyra's. "Now, move," they said. Lyra followed, her body tense, but moving as instructed. Step by step, they navigated the canyon floor, weaving around rocks and debris. The creatures lunged once, but the human activated another pulse, creating a barrier of light that forced them back. Lyra realized humans did not rely on brute strength alone. They used intelligence, strategy, and tools to survive and to protect others. The creatures regrouped, circling once more. Lyra felt panic rise in her chest, but the human's calm presence anchored her. She had begun to understand that fear could be managed, not ignored, and that with careful planning, even overwhelming danger could be faced. Lyra, behind the human, commanded softly, pointing to a narrow passage between two cliffs. Without hesitation, she obeyed, moving into the shadows as the human prepared to confront the creatures. She held her breath as the human activated the device again. Pulses of light flashed, and the creatures screeched, staggering back. The human strategy was simple, but effective to keep the enemies at bay while creating an opening for escape. Once the path was clear, the human gestured for Lyra to follow. She ran, her steps quick but controlled, relying on the human's guidance. Together, they navigated the winding canyon, staying ahead of the pursuing creatures. Lyra's confidence in herself grew with each successful maneuver. She was not helpless. With the human's support, she could face the threats that had once terrified her. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of motion, caution, and calculated risk. Finally, they reached a small ledge that overlooked a wider valley. From there, they could see a safer route across the canyon. Lyra's chest heaved with exhaustion, but she also felt a thrill of accomplishment. She had faced danger and survived. She had faced her fear and kept moving forward. The human glanced at her, their expressions softening. "Strong, trust," they said simply. The words were few, but their meaning was clear. They were acknowledging her bravery, her growth, and the trust she had placed in them. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. Trust was a fragile thing, easily broken, yet here it had been built step by step, through danger and cooperation. As they began to descend into the valley, another threat emerged. A patrol of enemy soldiers appeared at the far edge of the canyon, their armor glinting in the faint light. Lyra froze, fear rising again, but the human did not hesitate. They crouched, scanning the terrain, and then whispered instructions in a calm, steady voice. "Hide." "Wait," they said. "Move." When safe, Lyra followed, crouching behind rocks as the human led the way through a series of shadows and cover. The soldiers moved cautiously, unaware of their presence. Lyra's pulse pounded in her ears, but the human remained a steady guide, leading her past danger with precision and care. She realized again that humans combined courage with intelligence. They did not rush blindly into battle they thought planned, and acted with skill. When they were finally out of sight of the patrol, Lyra let out a shaky breath. The human looked at her with quiet concern. "Fear. Normal, you." "Learning," they said. Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced fear, survived, and grown stronger. The journey through the valley was treacherous. Loose rocks, sudden drops, and narrow ledges tested every step, but with a human beside her, guiding, supporting, and protecting. Lyra discovered a resilience she had not known she possessed. Each obstacle they overcame was a lesson. Each challenge a reminder that survival required courage, trust, and teamwork. At one point, they reached a fast-moving river that cut through the valley. The water was deep, and the current strong. Lyra hesitated, her fear of drowning rising. The human assessed the situation quickly, finding a safe crossing point among the rocks. "Step. Careful." Together, they instructed. Lyra nodded, gripping their hand tightly. Step by step, they crossed the river, the current tugging at her legs, but the human's steady grip kept her safe. When they reached the other side, Lyra felt a surge of confidence. She had faced yet another danger and survived. As night fell, they made a small camp beneath the overhang of a rocky cliff. The human activated a small light and prepared a simple meal from their supplies. Lyra sat nearby, watching, learning how humans managed even the simplest tasks with care and foresight. They offered her food, and she ate slowly, savoring each bite. For the first time in days, she felt truly nourished, not just physically, but emotionally. After the meal, Lyra spoke softly. "Why? Help me. Others." "Leave me?" she asked. The human looked at her calmly, then smiled gently. "Life. Matter. All life. Matter. Help. Each other," they said. Lyra understood the meaning. Humans did not abandon others, even in danger. They valued life and believed in protecting those who could not protect themselves. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration. The human gestured for her to rest while they kept watch. Lyra lay down, the soft blanket around her shoulders providing warmth. She watched the human, vigilant even in the dim light, and realized how much she had already come to rely on them. Their presence had changed everything. Where once she had felt alone and abandoned, now she felt supported, protected, and hopeful. Sleep came slowly, but Lyra drifted into it knowing she was safe. In her dreams, she saw fragments of the battle, the betrayal, and the ruins, but they were tempered by the image of the human beside her, guiding her, helping her survive. The contrast was stark, yet comforting. Where once she had known only fear, now she felt trust, courage, and the first glimmer of hope. Morning came with a faint glow on the horizon. Lyra rose carefully, stretching her stiff muscles. The human had prepared a small breakfast, and they shared it silently, both aware of the dangers that might still lie ahead. Today, they would continue their journey towards safety, navigating unknown terrain and avoiding threats. Yet Lyra no longer felt the same dread she had felt before. She had survived the darkness of the canyon, faced predators, and evaded enemy soldiers. She had learned to trust the human, and in doing so, she had found a new strength within herself. As they packed up their camp and prepared to move, Lyra looked at the human. "Ready? Go," she asked. The human nodded. "Yes, forward," they said. Together, they stepped into the valley, moving with purpose, determination, and trust. The path ahead was still dangerous, the world still filled with uncertainty, but they would face it together. For the first time since the battle, Lyra believed not only in survival, but in hope. She was no longer alone, and she had learned that trust, courage, and intelligence could turn even the darkest circumstances into a chance for life. And with the human beside her, she felt that nothing, not even the shadows that haunted the canyon, could stop them from moving forward. The human ship glided smoothly above the distant planet, its engines whispering through the thin atmosphere. Lyra watched through the viewport, her eyes wide with wonder. The planet below was alive with color and movement forests stretching toward the horizon. Rivers glinting in the sunlight, and small settlements scattered across the land. It was a sharp contrast to the barren, ruined world she had left behind. She felt the warmth of the healing device pulsing lightly at her side. Her injuries were fully mended, her strength restored. Her muscles moved freely, her breath came easily, and the dull ache that had haunted her for weeks was gone. She felt alive, truly alive. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, the human seated beside her glanced at her with a faint smile. "Almost home," they said simply. There was calm in their voice, a certainty that Lyra found reassuring. She nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. A new life awaited her, but stepping into it would require courage. She had survived abandonment, betrayal, and danger, but now she faced the unknown. When the ship landed, Lyra was amazed at the human research station. It was large, but inviting, with domed structures and pathways lined with trees. Humanoid beings moved efficiently about the station, some working with small machines, others tending gardens or maintaining the ships. The air was clean, and the sounds of activity were calming. Here, life seemed safe, purposeful, and organized. The human guided her down the ramp, their hand firm and reassuring. "Safe, now," they said. Lyra looked around, her heart swelling with gratitude. She was no longer alone. She had found someone who had saved her life, guided her, and helped her regain her strength. And now, she had a chance to start over. The human led her through the station, showing her basic facilities: the medical bay, where advanced machines could heal wounds in minutes; the living quarters, small but comfortable; and the communal areas where humans and a few friendly alien species worked and lived together. Lyra marveled at the organization and efficiency. Humans, she realized, did not simply survive, they built, they created, and they helped others thrive. In the medical bay, the human gestured for her to sit. Machines hummed softly, scanning her body to ensure that her recovery was complete. Lyra watched, fascinated, as the technology monitored her health, adjusted her posture, and even enhanced her strength slightly to help her adapt to her new environment. The human worked beside her, explaining in simple words what each device did. She listened carefully, eager to understand and learn. "You." "Stronger," the human said, glancing at her with approval. Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, thanks." "You," she replied. The words felt small compared to the gratitude she felt, but they were sincere. The human nodded, a quiet acknowledgement that no further words were needed. Over the next few days, Lyra began to adjust to her new life. She learned the basics of human technology, observed the efficiency of their methods, and even assisted in minor tasks around the station. Each small success boosted her confidence. The humans treated her with respect, never assuming weakness because of her past injuries or her alien form. They valued her abilities and welcomed her as part of the community. One morning, the human approached her while she worked in the station's garden. "Walk outside?" they asked. Lyra nodded eagerly. The two of them stepped out into the open, where sunlight warmed her skin, and the scent of growing plants filled the air. For the first time since the battle, she felt peace. She realized that life could be gentle, beautiful, and full of possibilities. As they walked along a small path, the human spoke in simple words. Life. Fragile. Help. Others. Lyra understood immediately. Humans believed in protection, in helping those who could not protect themselves. She thought of the desolate planet, the ruins, the betrayal she had endured, and she realized how extraordinary it was that humans could carry compassion even into danger. She turned to the human. "Why me?" she asked softly. The human smiled faintly, their eyes calm and unwavering. "Because matter, all life, matter, you. Survive," they said. The meaning was clear. Life was valuable, and every being deserved a chance. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had been abandoned, left to die. But now, someone had given her a future. Days turned into weeks. Lyra's skills improved, and she became a valued member of the station. She learned to operate machinery, assist with minor repairs, communicate with other species who lived alongside humans. She discovered that humans did not simply act alone, they worked together, creating communities where strength, intelligence, and compassion were combined. Her bond with the human who had saved her grew stronger. They trained together, explored nearby areas, and shared stories of the worlds they had seen. Lyra told her rescuer about the betrayal she had endured and the fear that had followed her for so long. The human listened patiently, never judging, never questioning, only offering guidance and reassurance. In return, the human shared stories of their own home, their experiences, and the lessons humans had learned from surviving countless dangers. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, Lyra stood beside the human on a balcony overlooking the station. The wind carried the scent of the forests below, and the soft sounds of life echoed in the distance. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and belonging. "You changed my life," she said quietly, looking at them. The human smiled. "No, changed both," they replied, together. Strong Lyra nodded, realizing that they had indeed changed each other. She had learned trust, courage, and resilience. The human had shown compassion, patience, and the extraordinary power of helping others. Together they had faced danger, survived, and grown stronger. As the days passed, Lyra fully embraced her new life. She no longer feared abandonment or betrayal. She had discovered that trust, once earned, could create bonds stronger than fear. She had learned that survival was not just about strength or skill, it was about caring for others. Working together and never giving up hope, the human guided her toward a small shuttle. Ready to explore nearby planets for research and aid missions? Ready, Journey? They asked. Lyra nodded, excitement and determination shining in her eyes. She felt capable, empowered, and eager to face the world. Together, they stepped into the shuttle, leaving behind the station briefly to explore the galaxy. Lyra felt a thrill of possibility. For the first time, she realized that her life was not defined by fear, pain, or betrayal, but by courage, trust, and the chance to help others. She had survived the worst the universe had thrown at her. Now she could thrive. The shuttle lifted off, soaring into the sky. Lyra looked down at the station, then at the planet below. She thought of the desolate world she had left behind, the ruins, the betrayal, the endless struggle. And she smiled. She had been wounded and abandoned, but she had been found. She had been saved, healed, and given a chance to start anew. Beside her, the human monitored the controls, calm and confident as always. She glanced at them, her heart filled with gratitude and admiration. They had not only saved her life, but had shown her the true meaning of courage, compassion, and resilience. As the shuttle soared into the endless expanse of stars, Lyra felt a sense of freedom she had never known. The galaxy stretched before her, full of possibilities and adventure. She realized that the universe was vast, but with allies, trust, and courage. There was no danger she could not face. And so, Lyra's new life began. She was no longer a victim of betrayal or fear. She was a survivor, a learner, and a companion. With the human who had found her by her side, she knew that she could explore new worlds, face new challenges, and embrace a future full of hope. Together, they would journey through the stars, discovering new planets, meeting new beings, and proving that courage, compassion, and trust could change lives, and in the harshest corners of the galaxy. For Lyra, the abandoned alien, life had finally begun, and with humans, she had found not just survival, but purpose, friendship, and hope.